Okay, I'm down. You got limits, man. You got limits, man. Okay, I'm down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm, of course, Katie Halper, and we are thrilled to be here with you guys tonight. We have a jam-packed show. We have great guests. We have guests talking about a number of things. During the second half of the show, we'll be talking to the chaps from Due Dissidence. We're also going to be talking to filmmaker Illana Trachtman. But during the first section of the show, I know you guys are going to be thrilled because these are two of our fan faves, friends of the show, Noura Erakat and Mouin Rabbani. Before we start talking with them, though, please do give a thumbs up. That's a free way for you to support the show. Just give it a thumbs up, give it a like. Also, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, and you can do that by hitting subscribe and then the bell. Thank you, Brad, for putting that up there. And also, if you can become Patreon supporters, please become Patreon supporters at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And you will have access to hundreds, literally hundreds of extended and bonus episodes if you pay for the $5 a month level. And if you can't do that, but you can just do $1 a month, $12 a year, then you get to sleep well knowing that you are contributing to this show, which we literally couldn't do it without you guys. And I know lots of places say that, but we actually couldn't do it without you guys. Sorry, I'm looking behind me because I'm trying to see if I'm not at home, as you guys probably realize, but Bucky is, come here, Bucks. Let me see if he'll sit on my lap during the show. Come here, Bucks, come here. Sorry, 1 second. Here, Brad, you want to vamp for a second while I try to get Bucky? Oh, wait, here he's coming to me. I underestimated you, Bucks. Oh, okay. Here's Bucky. Just quick hello. Okay, great. Now we can start. Okay, don't sniff. Oh, he smells my nectarine. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to just start with the show. And again, we are so excited to be having these two great guests come on. They are so insightful and so astute, and they really do the Lord's work. I say that as a secular person. So the secular Lord's agnostic. So the I don't know Lord's work in their scholarship, but also in their speaking out and in their activism. And I'm speaking about none other than Noura Erakat, the human rights attorney, professor at Rutgers, and also Mouin Rabbani, the inimitable Palestinian-Dutch analyst. And I could read all of their credits, but we'd be here all day. But they're linked in the description, and they're both involved with great organizations. So, and I'll ask them to pitch them actually and plug them as they see fit when they come on the show right now. Welcome, Mouin, and welcome, Noura. Hi. Let's see. You're muted, Mouin. Like you're not already silenced.
That's
enough.
right. Hello, Katie and Noura. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Good to see you both.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, especially because of how busy you guys are. And of course, you're a perfect guest to talk about some breaking news, which is that the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry put out a new report detailing Israel's genocide. That's, of course, not breaking news that it's genocide. It's breaking news that they're declaring it genocide, accusing them of such, and also accusing them of incitement to genocide. So what are both of your thoughts on this new report?
I mean, I guess I'll just say what everyone is thinking, which is, great, but also why did it take so long? We're on day 703, and we have had a number of scholars who study this, legal scholars who study this. We have the non-legal scholars, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who have already declared this. 2 Israeli human rights organizations have said it. And I think what it reflects for us is really the tepidness of the United Nations in this particular moment, when it's also obviously in its own existential point where we're not really sure what's going to happen with the United Nations as it remains a site of attack. Anything that they do is threatened immediately by it's the position that the United States has, which is the location in New York, and the fact that the U.S. is the largest funder of the UN. And so we come again in the interface between the relationship between, human rights in this case, or international criminal law in this case, and its relationship to power, and how that's impacting an outcome. I will say that at the end of the day, this is incredibly important, not necessarily for this particular moment where this feels redundant or too late, but it's incredibly important because of what is coming down the line. I think that this debate over whether or not it's genocide is a complete distraction. The question of, the determination of it is not contingent on a legal finding. And in fact, we saw that very clearly at the end of the Biden administration, where Secretary of State Blinken actually declared that there was a genocide in the Sudan. And when the ambassador on international crimes was questioned, what standards did you use to come to this conclusion? This was a PBS show with Amna Fawaz. She says, you can determine it's a genocide based on the pattern of killing and based on what we hear these leaders saying their intent is. And so Fawaz in that moment says to her, great. So can you use that same standard in order to come to the same conclusion about Israel's genocide? And, the ambassador is kind of fidgeting in her seat and keeps repeating this BS about, we believe in a two-state solution, which we should get to, I'm sure, on this program as well. We believe in a two-state solution. And Fawaz keeps pressing her. And then the ambassador to international crimes for the United States says, you know what? The International Court of Justice is deliberating this, and we won't know if it's a genocide until they tell us it is or it's not. Now, on the one hand, she's transparently contradicting herself, where the administration has declared a genocide in the Sudan without even a case in front of the ICJ on this situation. So, but on the other hand, it's also heightening for us what the value and the significance of this ICJ decision is. And what I want to emphasize is that is going to revolve around the political situation, right? I think so much of the work that's being done to repress, to punish, to marginalize, to shelve those who are insisting that it's genocide is also trying to, it's an investment in that future decision, right? This is not merely going to be a legal decision, but it's going to be a political one. Who's on the court? What is the balance of power? If there's a peace agreement, which there won't be, but if there was, would the legal decision undermine the peace agreement? And if it does, then they should find otherwise and find a way to thread the needle the way that they did, right? If you look at the Bosnia Herzegovina versus Serbia case, they didn't find genocide except for in one case, in Srebrenica, right? There's a way that you can thread the needle and distinguish ethnic cleansing from genocide. And so I think that as much critique as we might have, an analysis that we might have about this report that came out today, right, by the Commission of Inquiry, ultimately it's adding to the historical record and to the narrative battle that we are engaged in order to ensure a particular outcome later, that we can't have a historical revision about this moment and call it anything else besides a genocide, which is precisely what that New York Declaration does, the French-Saudi Declaration, which, on the two states that we're probably going to get to. What that initiative does is try to create a revisionist history already by, in passing in the annex saying it, while some may argue it's a genocide, but they don't say that it is, and they describe it as a war, and they equivocate between October 7th and the 703 days that have passed.
Yes. I mean, anything that you want to add to that, Mouin? I have some follow-ups, but
just to add to Noura's points, this report was issued by the Commission of Inquiry, which has a broader brief than Francesca Albanese, the special rapporteur. This Commission of Inquiry, established by the UN Human Rights Commission in 2020 or 2021, is a three-person commission. It's led by Navi Pillay, former South African judge who also chaired the International Tribunal on the genocide in Rwanda, Chris Sidoti, a renowned Australian human rights specialist, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of the third member of that panel. And of course, immediately, the Hasbara Symphony Orchestra has a meltdown and starts flinging accusations. These people don't know anything about genocide. They wouldn't recognize genocide if it hits them in the face, and so on. I thought, and what's interesting is that all three members of the commission collectively resigned about a month or two ago, and they didn't really give a clear reason for doing so. There was speculation that they were concerned about the escalating campaign of sanctions and so on by the US government against anyone who dares criticize Israel. And it was suggested that Navi Pillay in particular apparently has a daughter who lives in the US and was worried she would have trouble visiting her grandchildren. And then Norman Finkelstein came with a different analysis that to me appears very credible, even if it's not definitive, which is that in his latest report on states and movements engaging in sexual violence, the list of shame, Israel was excluded. And it was put on something like a warning list or something. It was put on notice rather than included in the list of shame. And this was despite all the evidence that had been presented to him by the same commission. And Norman Finkelstein suggests that actually they were resigning in protest against the UN Secretary General refusing to act on the evidence, the overwhelming evidence that they had placed before him. The other point I'd make is that if the report makes several key conclusions. The first is it doesn't say that Israel is now engaging in genocide. It states very clearly Israel has been engaging in genocide since October 2023. And its motivations for reaching those conclusions has not only to do with the incredible level of death and destruction being perpetrated by Israel in the Gaza Strip, but also specifically its attacks on the health sector, its attacks on ability to have children and so on. So, and of course, intent. And the third point that was made, I believe, by Chris Sidoti in a press conference today is that the Genocide Convention imposes on states not only an obligation to punish, but also an obligation of prevention. And in this sense, just to amplify what Noura said, it's a complete cop-out to wait until the International Court of Justice reaches a definitive ruling in 2 or perhaps 3 or more years. There's very compelling evidence that Israel is engaging in genocide. And at the very least, the one argument that can't be contested is that the very real risk of genocide imposes on states around the world an obligation to prevent what is happening rather than to enable and support and lend impunity to what's happening. And then Sidoti was also asked about, the criticisms being flung at the commission by Israel. And he said he's under the impression that these criticisms are done by AI, by ChatGPT, because it's always, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the individuals, regardless of the report, it's always the same criticism. These people are acting on behalf of Hamas and so on.
Right. Well, yeah, who knew that they had such international reach, Hamas,
Yes.
But all the way to Chris Sidoti. And in fact, we are going to show those videos that you just mentioned, Mouin. So here is Chris Sidoti talking about the obligation vis-a-vis genocide. Then we're going to look at the ridiculous response from Israel, and then we'll look at his response to that.
The most significant aspect of the interim orders of 26 January 2024 was that every country in the world was put on notice by the International Court of Justice that there was a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. And if it had not happened before that, it certainly happened then, that every country in the world became obliged under the law to take action, not to speak fine words, to take action to prevent genocide. There can be no doubt whatsoever that that obligation was activated on the 24th of January 2024, if not before. And in response to your question, that applies as much to India As Jamie, it applies to Germany and the United States, as it applies to my country and every other country.
Okay, so you want to react to that, or do you want us to get to the great part, which is Israel's response? Up to
I
you
want to react to that, although I can't wait for the great response. And it's just, an example of how we should be responding to them anyway. Because I had the same thought before you played that clip, right? This idea that somehow the Genocide Convention is the convention to prevent. Right? That's literally in its title. And so when the ICJ in 2024 says that it's plausible, it basically imposes a series of obligations of how to avoid it and to prevent it if it didn't definitively exist. And amongst the things that it proscribes in its provisional measures is that it makes clear that humanitarian aid must reach all Palestinians at all time, the civilians at all time, that they should have humanitarian corridors, that they should have safe quarter, that they should have relief. And they also say very explicitly, and this is right, they say very explicitly that if Israel cannot fight this war in any other way than in one, if it is a war, as Israel wants to insist, and it cannot fight it in any other way than how it's resulting in these outcomes, then it shouldn't fight it. Right. So we're being told really early on that either they're going to find another way and they're going to make sure that people are safe, but they don't have permission to, run roughshod in what they call as a war, which is obviously not a war. But even if we took that for granted, the other thing that I want to say, not only did all these states, disregard this obligation under international law, this like brazen disregard, most evidently by the United States and its allies, Canada and Germany, and I think even Australia at the time, they respond to it by cutting aid to UNRWA, right? They respond to it literally by going after those who do need relief, the Palestinian refugees. But add insult to injury, when the ICC, the International Criminal Court, now this is a treaty-made court, unlike the ICJ, which is a derivative, right? The primary judicial organ of the United Nations. But when the ICC then in May 2025 issues these arrest warrants, now
May 24.
May 24. Thank you. You have these countries that now have an obligation, who are parties to the treaty, to arrest Netanyahu, instead making excuses about why they don't need to, including France, which says that they don't need to arrest Netanyahu because Israel is not a party to the Rome Statute, which is absolutely not true and legally inaccurate. And then you have other states, from Hungary, which maybe we're not surprised by, but then, last week, Starmer welcoming Netanyahu. And so there's this brazen disregard of international law that, again, it's, going back again, how Mouin described it as a cop-out. They're using the law and the lack of definitive as a cop-out at the same time that they're violating the law systematically and undermining these international institutions.
Right. Yeah. It is really unbelievable that they're trying to almost get away with not having to stop a genocide. It's like they're looking for loopholes, right? They're not trying to do the right thing. It's almost like, what's it like, corporate compliance, when you like hire a lawyer to show you how you can break the law without breaking the law?
Precisely. I just, while you were showing that video clip, I just looked up the third member of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry is Mouin Kothari from India. So I just wanted to note that. And just to follow up on what Noura just said, Greece, Italy, and France, all three of whom have ratified the Rome Statute and are members of the Assembly of State Parties of the International Criminal Court, have effectively repudiated the Rome Statute and have effectively left the court de facto because Netanyahu and Gallant, both fugitives from international justice, wanted and indicted for war crimes and crimes against humanity by the ICC, have been permitted on multiple occasions to use their airspace on their way to their hero's welcome in Washington. Now, imagine if one of the Africans who were often indicted by the ICC had flown through these countries' airspace, or Russians, and had been allowed free passage. all hell would break loose, but Israel, the Israelis constantly complain about double standards. Well, yes, they are held to a different standard than everyone else, which is to say that the standards everyone else is supposed to abide by are never imposed on them.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's interesting that they bring it up. They're right that there's a double standard. It's just in the opposite direction,
Yes.
as you were just saying, Mouin. Well, let's take a look at the response from Israel, because it's a doozy. Okay, so this is from Israel Foreign Ministry. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just capture some gems. So in response to the Pillay, Sidoti, and Kothari Commission of Inquiry's fake report, 3 individuals serving as Hamas proxies, notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions and whose horrific statements about Jews have been condemned worldwide, released today another fake report about Gaza. The report relies entirely on Hamas falsehoods, laundered and repeated by others. These fabrications have already been thoroughly debunked. Let's see. In stark contrast to the lies to the report, Hamas is the party that attempted genocide in Israel, murdering 1,200 people, raping women, burning families alive, and openly declaring its goal of killing every Jew. By the way, I just have to say, because I can't openly lie. I don't want it. That's obviously a lie. Just pushing back, because I don't want anyone to clip that and think that I'm saying that that's what actually happened. Miraculously, all 3 authors of this fabricated report have recently resigned. This goes back to what you were saying. They should not be replaced. Israel categorically rejects this distorted and false report and calls for the immediate abolition of this commission of inquiry. Okay. And then we'll just give you guys a second to gather your thoughts and process that. And we'll go to Chris's response to that.
Israeli Foreign Ministry today decried a distorted and false report and said that 3 individuals, so referring to the Commission of Inquiry, 3 individuals serving as Hamas proxies, notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions. Could you please comment on that?
These reports should be taken seriously, but honestly, the Israeli responses are becoming so boring. They say the same thing every time. They're producing the responses by ChatGPT these days, and they spend so much money in the Foreign Ministry on propaganda. You'd think that they would actually come up with something original. I would want them to engage with the evidence, but they never engage with the evidence. They put the report into ChatGPT, and then they put out the standard response. So no one takes it seriously, and Jamie, you shouldn't either.
Yeah, that's not how you ask.
Well put.
Yeah.
Can I just say, to me, the key sentence in the response of the Israeli Foreign Ministry is they should not be replaced. As far as Israel is concerned, the problem is not the members of the commission. The problem is not the reports the commission issue, although, of course, they strenuously reject all of that. For them, the key issue is that this commission simply should not exist. The idea of a commission that actually examines Israel's conduct and crimes is sacrilege. And you see exactly the same thing with the special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied territories. Yes, they constantly condemn Francesca Albanese, but they have constantly condemned each of her predecessors in precisely the same terms, always concluding with, this person should be removed and the office should be abolished. The position, rather, should be abolished.
Right.
I want to add to that, and then maybe pivot somewhere. I don't know if it'll take us too far, but we'll see what you say. But just to add to that, so this is specifically the commentary on the Human Rights Council and its permanent issues. And the permanent issues are broad in theme, right? It's women, water, food, housing. The occupied Palestinian territories, number 7 is the only one that has that kind of geographical specificity. And so the argument is that this is right, that this is singling out Israel, that's why it should. That this is why it should be abolished, because no other place is similarly singled out. But what they're disregarding is the historical context from which that emerges and what it reflects. There had historically been permanent, for example, permanent committees that examined apartheid in South Africa and Southwest Africa, also known as Namibia. Right. As those situations were resolved and apartheid was abolished, that's why those specialized committees dissipate. This issue on the occupied Palestinian territories represents, particularly for the third world, which becomes an automatic majority between, the late 1960s and early 1970s, this represents to them one of the last anti-colonial struggles that was part of their agenda. So it's not that they are being singled out, it's that this was part of its unfinished business. And so that's why we see an overemphasis, or what might appear like an overemphasis numerically without context, on this particular issue. So anyway, just to push back on the argument that they would make, and why the only reason that they could make it is because they're pretending like colonialism doesn't exist, and this wasn't actually a victory for the third world to make sure that it remained a primary issue.
Keep going. Sorry.
Well, okay. So then the other thing I was going to say.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you, Katie. I'm looking at this and I've been thinking about this for a while. Just notice how in that, per usual, in that tweet and elsewhere, and all these lackeys who want to make this argument, who are really just fascists, who are making the argument that somehow it's okay to slaughter Palestinians in order to preserve Israeli life. It's okay to, snipe children in the head and have them rot in NICU beds. It's okay, and
it's not in order to preserve Israeli life. That's like the lie, but yeah.
No, but that is the lie. I mean, but that's what they're telling the world, right?
Yeah, of course.
And they're telling a Western audience, which is actually very sympathetic to that, because for them, the Holocaust was, the worst atrocity in the world, as opposed to understanding that the Holocaust was, the Third Reich's perfection of colonial violence that had been meted out, very vividly across the African continent, in the transatlantic slave trade, in the Americas of indigenous nations, and so on and so forth. And this is Amy Cesarian going back to thinking about that. But here's what bothers me so much is how little they have to try to even, engage with the evidence. Sidoti also says that they never engage with the evidence, and they don't, because all they have to say is Hamas. It becomes a floating signifier. And I've been thinking for a minute, like, where could we have made it more of a conversation to discuss Hamas, right? That even our allies want to say the Palestinian people are not Hamas, but that's not helpful. That's not helpful. Like, maybe they're not members and maybe they're not fighters in Hamas, but that doesn't mean that they don't espouse, very similar ideas about Palestinian freedom that are rooted, in the points of unity regarding, the right to self-determination, the right of refugees, and the right to armed resistance, And so when we're not, the way that, Hamas is basically used as a cover is all Palestinians are either Hamas or not Hamas. And if they're not Hamas, then that becomes an excuse that allows us to target everybody else and call, these casualties collateral damage. I just feel that we've cornered ourselves by not being able to have that direct conversation that is actually centering a particular kind of history that gets us out of this trap.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you feel like that's something you're seeing and thinking about more now, like with distance from October 7th? Because you've been on the show a bunch, and you obviously, you do shows all the time, and you write and you talk about this. Is that something that you feel you are always aware of, or is that something that, like, with more distance, you're thinking about more?
Oh, no, Katie. I got banned, I think, and Mouin might have said, same thing might happen to him. I got blacklisted by week 2 by NBC and CBS. Yeah, because I was trying to make these points.
Yeah,
like BBC producers, when I refused, when they said, we want to have you on the show and tell us why all Palestinians are not Hamas, and I told them that was a very racist.
And exactly, and we actually, we clipped that. So this is just okay. No, for some reason it was the way you were presenting it. I thought that this was something new that you were thinking about, but no, you're just applying it to this context. That's okay. I got it. Yeah, no, and that's really important. I think a lot of people try to walk that line. Sometimes opportunistically, sometimes like cynically. And then I think there are people who in good faith don't know what to do because they know that it's like a, prescribed organization and they don't want to get some people in trouble. But then how do you do that also without totally like vilifying the actual claims of Hamas that are just, and people are afraid, I think, to even say that out loud sometimes. But yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's come up a lot. And it has from the beginning, Noura, obviously, but
no, but from the beginning, but even now, for example, I was watching Mygan Kelly on Fox News, the beacon of morality. Right. And she was going on and on about Israel. She, how awful they were and but then she stops and says, she's keen to say that obviously Hamas wants this to happen. Obviously, Hamas, wants their Palestinians to be killed in order to, share their message everywhere. And Israel is falling into their trap. Right. That even in this moment of slight criticism, right, there is still this, Hamas is the much more significant culprit and barbarian.
All Palestinians want to get killed by Israel. Right. And those that don't are going to get killed by Israel because Hamas wants all of them to get killed. Right. And so, you can't really hold Israel responsible because at the end of the day, it's just doing Hamas's bidding.
Right. It's such like a abuse discourse, like you made me do it. This hurts me and it hurts you. Yeah. And it reminds me of that lie, that terrible quote, which may be apocryphal, may not be, but it still captures the sentiment. What is it like? Gold in my ear, like we can forgive the Arabs, of course, for killing our children, but not for making us kill theirs. Disgusting.
It's a straight line. It's a straight line of victim blaming. Senator Barbara Boxer, I think during the second Intifada in the early 2000s, said the same thing, that Palestinian mothers need to love their children more rather than to breed them to go out to kill them.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this is
was it Cynthia Ozick who described Palestinians as people who breed and bleed and advertise their misery? This whole idea, I think, what you're referring to, Palestinians need to learn to love their own children more than they hate Jews or something like that. We have to recognize this rancid, systematic campaign of dehumanization is decades old, and in fact has been intensifying to unprecedented levels since October 2023. But to me, what really stands out is that despite this, the recognition of Palestinian humanity and recognition of the inhumanity of Israeli conduct has reached peak levels. So it's not working anymore because this instruction to not believe your lying eyes, just trust whatever comes out of Israel. This idea that all Israel has to do is utter the magic word self-defense, and that justifies everything it does. That no longer works. Support for this has irreversibly collapsed.
Right. Yeah, the magic words of Hamas and anti-Semitism and October 7th. I think they keep working on the same people that they've always worked on, but it's certainly not working on. There are people who I think at first took it seriously who now are not. Like they were because I think there is a difference between like ignorant people and people who know exactly what's happening. And I think
exactly
people who were ignorant. I've told this story before, but I have someone in my extended family who wrote to me. He emailed me and he was like, Katie, I guess you were right. And then he writes in parentheses, or extreme left on Israel, Palestine. And he goes, yeah, I saw that movie, No Other Land. And, what made him able to see what was happening is that it was pre-October 7th and it was not Gaza. And so all the propaganda and I'm not justifying being duped by this, but all the propaganda of Hamas, self-defense, October 7th was kind of out the window. That's one of, I think, the real values of that film is it shows stuff that happened before. Not that it's okay to do it because of, not that it's okay to do what they're doing in Gaza and not okay to do what they're doing in the West Bank, but it just isolates it from the very powerful propaganda that I think has seduced a lot of people.
No, but I think that's extremely relevant, and especially, thinking about despite the extreme propaganda, especially in the United States, despite the collusion of universities and mainstream media organizations, and I think what was it like only 3% of Congress opposes the genocide, whereas over 50% of Americans do, right? That despite all of this propaganda, we're still getting what Mouin is saying is that there's a shift nonetheless. There's a shift nonetheless. Imagine if there hadn't been such powerful propaganda to do it. Now, what is the value of that shift in this moment when we see authoritarianism rise? I mean, across the Arab world, the majority of Arabs oppose genocide, and yet you don't see Arab leaders, joining the Hague Group or imposing arms embargoes. So I don't want to correlate that this massive shift in opinion, correlates to a change in policy. We're going to need a lot more. But just acknowledging that one of the pillars is definitely, changing.
Right. Like nothing will change policy wise. It's necessary, but insufficient, right, to have the change in public opinion. Well, speaking of fascism, do you guys have a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Well, speaking of fascism, obviously Charlie Kirk was killed, and the right and MAGA have been using this as an excuse to really crack down on free speech, which is ironic because they also claim that Charlie Kirk was a champion of free speech. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy there. But I did want to play a clip of CodePINK, the great CodePINK, interrupting Trump's dinner. Let's take a look at this clip. And then a Trump cabinet dinner. Let's take a look at that. And then we'll look at Trump's response to that.
Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time. What do you want your legacy to be? Let's go. What do you want your legacy to be? He's terrorizing communities. Let's go. Time to go. He's terrorizing communities. Time to go. Time to go. Puerto Rico. Let's go. Free DC, free Palestine. Trump is the Hitler of our time.
Okay, so there's that. And then let's see how Trump responded to this.
And a woman, in many cases, women, you can see they're professional agitators. I had one the other night. I had 4 the other night, all in one group, total phonies. I started to scream when I got into a restaurant, oh, something with Palestine. And I said, well, I'm doing a great job for peace in the Middle East. I should get lots of awards for that, right? With the Abraham Accords and everything else. But a woman just stood up and started screaming. And she got booed out of the place, too. There were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator. And you have a lot of them. And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against it, criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail. What they're doing to this country is really subversive.
Subversive, yeah. So, what are your thoughts? And Noura, I'm also curious to hear yours, especially as a lawyer. You may be having to defend some of these people.
I'll let Maureen go first. First, I'll just say that was a bar, right? CodePINK was dropping bars at the restaurant. But go ahead, Maureen.
No, I mean, I think the clip speaks for itself and has to be seen in the wider context of what is now, well, a much longer, but particularly 2-year campaign to not only delegitimize, but even to criminalize pro-Palestinian or anti-Israeli speech. And we heard Trump basically saying these people should be in jail. His word is his cabinet's command. And we've already seen, one university after the other capitulating to Trump's campaign. And I think what people need to recognize is that 2 things are going on. On the one hand, there is a concerted, systematic campaign to suppress and repress pro-Palestinian speech. But the people behind this, on the whole, also have a larger, more general agenda for whom Palestine is the weakest link, for whom Palestine is the battering ram that will open the door for them to be able to employ similar tactics against people who speak out or act on a whole number of other issues. We're seeing the exact same thing now in Britain with designating Palestine Action as a terrorist organization, putting it in the same category as ISIS because some of its activists threw paint on a fighter jet. Well, if the British government gets away with this, you really think it's going to be limited to Palestine action? You really think it's going to be limited to organizations that act on an agenda related to Palestine, and it's never going to be used against anyone else engaged in any other issue?
Yeah, that's a very important point and question.
I couldn't, I'm going to respond to all of Maureen's points. I couldn't agree more on this idea of not only is Gaza, for example, not only is Gaza a testing ground, but Gaza is also the way that we're all being primed for the danger that's meant for all of us. But there's less protest because it happens to be Palestinians who are suffering. And the desensitization, the dehumanization is literally priming audiences for an extreme amount of violence that I think is promised for everyone. Mouin is pointing out that, and I've shared this elsewhere of thinking about the boomerang effect, but the expansion of police powers, what happens in a colonial geography is coming to the metropole, so that you cannot defeat fascism without combating genocide. And in this case, we've already seen, right? We've already seen the way that the state gets to act without accountability. I mean, these ICE agents have no badges. We don't know if they're actually individuals who are just, sick, picking up people, or they're actually representing the state and there's no way to hold them to account. Yesterday, another fishing vessel, Venezuelan fishing vessel, was, shot down with a missile, by the accusation of narco-terrorism. Haitian groups are going to be labeled a foreign terrorist organization in order to remove them. But these are all things that I think have been practiced and tried. And I don't know where we get into it or don't, but this vision of, that what I think that they have in store for Gaza, this idea of turning it into a free trade zone, right, is a vision that they have for the rest of the world, of basically fragmenting us from one another, fragmenting a universal international law order so that we have several different orders that people can choose and pick from and be a part of, right? That there are no actually values that unite us. And so the gutting of FEMA in the middle of flooding in Texas, for example, or the municipal funding expansion of the LAPD's, budget at the same time that the fire department is being, attenuated. So all these things that are preparing us for more and more police, less and less state and welfare services, and in a way where many of these people are just going to be replaced anyway. I said a lot, so I'll pause on my other points. You wanted to ask about criminal charges and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. And I've heard you say that before about how, whatever happens in Gaza will happen to the rest of the world. And also
Palestine is a guinea pig.
Right. Here, I just want to show you talked about the boomerang effect and Cesar, and here is your, here's your article that I saw. So really recommend that. Great piece. Mouin, did you have any responses to what Noura just said?
No, just to concur and say, Palestine is quite clearly the guinea pig. Any test that succeeds on the Palestinian guinea pig will be considered applicable and useful in any number of other situations.
Right. Well, I would love to hear more from you guys if you have more thoughts that you want to share. If not, of course, really appreciate your time and generosity.
Can I share two thoughts real quick?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, please.
Two thoughts real quick. And this is to do, I'm not going to defend anybody. I'm not like a practicing lawyer in the United States. Like, you asked me about torture, and I'm more of a professor and writer. But there are these RICO charges that Trump did mention. These are conspiracy charges, racketeering, influence, and conspiracy charges that have been, normally used against, mafia or gang activity, that are being weaponized against activists, and that we've already seen them against the activists. I think 79 activists were charged with RICO and trying to stop Cop City. Those charges were dropped last week. So that's a small victory. I don't know how long it will last. And then the last thing I wanted to say, and this is just on this Trump pressure on the universities. Yes, obviously it's very true. And, there's anticipatory obedience. But I just want to emphasize these universities were doing this work even when nobody was pressuring or threatening them. Under the Biden administration, they did this work willingly on their own. And that is a reflection of the nature of the university and the fact that their trustees are no longer just folks who are committed to, learn. They're venture capitalists, right? They're hedge fund managers. They're folks who are interested in their investments. And so they are making decisions for the university where even before they were threatened with anything, they were rolling out, right? They were arresting their students, inviting the police, terrorizing them, shuttering their Middle East studies and making it impossible for faculty, firing tenured faculty before Trump.
Right. And Nancy Pelosi also accused CodePINK of being paid by China.
China, yeah. I mean, higher education has become an industry, and protesting students are treated akin to striking workers.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, I want to leave you guys with some good. I mean, you guys have seen a lot of silver linings, which is important because we need to be hopeful to keep going on. But also obviously aware of what's happening and not sugarcoating it. But I wanted to share this because this is something that as people know, there's a freedom flotilla. It's more boats than they've ever put together, up to 50 boats that they have now. And this is an image of certain creatures who are accompanying the Gaza flotilla. And this was sent by Philip Totenbaum, who is a veteran who's aboard the Owaila, which is bound for Gaza, part of the Samud flotilla. And this is the boat on its way to Gaza from Tunisia. So let's take a look at who showed up to protect them.
Hey.
Yeah, the dolphin. Anyway, that gave me
even the animal kingdom has figured this one out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The sharks are probably gonna. The sharks are bad though. Sharks are bad. So if the sharks convert, then I'll be really impressed. The dolphins.
Not all the sharks. Not all the sharks. Some of the sharks get eaten by the orcas.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, Noura, the orcas. I'm like, I want to see the orcas as well.
Yeah. I'm a sharkophobe. I have to work on it. Well, any also just final words, anything that you want to say about, I don't know if you're interested in this, but the Charlie Kirk, the discourse around Charlie Kirk's death, which is really, a lot of people are offering their thoughts and prayers. And, he's someone who kind of notoriously, well, he said that public executions, there should be public executions for the death penalty. Had no real empathy for Palestinians. And so it is kind of rich to watch people shed a tear for him when they're, I guess, okay with what's happening in Gaza.
I'm not American. I'm not in the United States, and it's not really a story I've been following.
Okay, fair.
I think I might say something a little bit controversial about this because, well, it's not about shedding a tear for him. One, I'm shocked that this kind of violence has taken this long to get to the United States. I thought it would happen much sooner because of the way that, we've just been fomenting and aiding and abetting and participating in the death traps in Gaza. So I personally think it's, at the same time, I'm not, it's not about shedding a tear for him, but I also think that we need to be wary about what we think, who deserves to live and die based on their ideas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, 100%. No, and I'm not someone who's been.
I don't think that you are, but I've seen a lot of things out there, and folks are like, he deserved it and whatnot. And I'm just like, I don't know if folks understand, but the right is actually training regularly on ranges, and they're fully armed. And if we actually open that gate and think this is okay, we're the ones that, are stand to be at the greatest amount of harm. Even if you want to think about it, if you don't want to think about it in this principled way, just think about it in
morality aside. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Even in a selfish way, we're not the one on the ranges. We're not the cops.
Yes.
We're not the military veterans that have come back armed and are agitated and now have a green light.
And we're not the state either. And we don't have like the ear of the state. Yeah.
And
I'm
yeah,
not-
they're gonna probably be pardoned. Worst case scenario. As what was that? There was like this young man who God, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right
Kyle
now.
Rittenhouse?
Yes,
Yeah.
Kyle Rittenhouse assassinated 2 protesters at a BLM protest. His mama drove him across state borders, killed 2 Black protesters, and then gets off because he was self-defense.
Right.
Like you're saying, the state isn't even on our side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He'll be punished twice.
No, and I'm not on this side of like ding dong, the witch is dead or anything. But I guess what frustrates me, and I'm sure frustrates you guys too, is just the way that people are. I wish people also cared when like Palestinian children were
100%.
blown into bits. That's all. Yeah. But I agree.
Well, just to interrupt you, Katie. Yeah, among elites, I think you make a perfectly valid point. Among the general population, the number of people who do care about this is simply overwhelming.
It's true. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Noura and Mouin, and please come back. We love having you on. It's always great.
Thank you, Katie.
This is great for us. You know, shout out to Jadalia. This is where Mouin and I traverse. And so it's so great. I'm a fan of Mouin's. I watch him. If folks haven't seen it, he just interviewed with Bassam Haddad, Trita Parsi. And so shout out on this recent bombing of Qatar, but also Iran and the remains of the axis of resistance.
Yeah, so Jadalia is great. Also, Middle East Memo, right? That's where you also
Middle East Monitor.
Middle East Monitor. Sorry, no, Middle East Monitor. Very different. Middle East Monitor. And Noura, you're at Rutgers. Anything else you want to shout out?
Yeah, Journal of Palestine Studies.
Journal of Palestine Studies, and of course, everyone should read. I'm not in my apartment, so I don't have it, but Justice for Some.
And Mouin, can you shout out your podcast?
Oh yeah.
Excuse me?
Could you also plug your podcast for
Yeah.
everyone?
Well, I have a podcast on Jadalia named Connections. And together with Bassam Haddad, I also do the Long Form Conversations podcast. And on Middle East Monitor, I do a weekly interview where I'm interviewed by Middle East Monitor, Nassim Ahmed, called This Week on Palestine. And that's then placed on YouTube. And every week we go through the local, regional, and international developments.
Yeah, and it's really good. And in fact, I have all these questions to ask you about the last one you did about the finance around genocide, but we'll have to have you back on.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night. All right, don't go anywhere, guys, because we've only just begun. I'm so excited to be bringing on our next guest. This is a person who is making her Katie Halper show debut, so things are really going to change for her. Major historic moment. Illana Trachtman is a filmmaker, and she has made this film that we are going to watch the teaser of. It's great. I saw it, and the film is called Ain't No Back to a Merry-Go-Round, and it's about how a 1960 neighborhood demonstration in Maryland shifted civil rights, and it was historic for many reasons. So Illana is also an Emmy Award-winning documentary director and producer with over 20 years of credits on PBS, HBO Family, ABC TV, Showtime, Sundance, Lifetime, Discovery, A&E, and Sesame Workshop. So welcome to the show, Illana.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. I want to just start off by showing a trailer of this film, which is great, and it kind of sets the scene, and then I have some questions for you. So shall we start with the trailer?
Sure.
Great. Brad, you have that, right? Okay, there we go. Oh, and I should add that if you're in the tri-state area, this is opening at IFC this week?
It's opening at IFC and New Plaza in New York and Somerville, Massachusetts.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Fun is where you find it.
We're going to have one swing in time at Glen Echo, the amusement park in Washington.
Glen Echo Amusement Park.
This park is segregated. You're not trespassing. May I ask your race?
My race, I belong to the human race.
Oh, we were dying to get in there.
I really wanted to ride on the carousel. Why couldn't we go and have fun like everybody else?
We were some bold people.
I knew there was something better for me.
We wouldn't let our kids come to Glen Echo because not everybody could come.
We are Americans too. We support this country. We love this country.
The Holocaust radicalized me.
The fight for civil rights is much my fight as it is theirs.
That was the first time I had any social contact with a white person.
White people feel it would really be totally wrong morally for young white girls to be bumping hips in a swimming pool with teenage Negro boys.
I was surprised because the majority of the people picketing were white.
Whose picket line is this?
A group of demonstrators have just marched through the gate.
Got on the merry-go-round.
And into a restaurant here.
Then the brown shirts showed up. I would be picketing while there are these people here whom I've fled.
I said, what are you doing here, you nigger? You want to die?
And the guy spit on me.
Spit right in her face. She just looked straight ahead and kept on walking.
Last night's group was the largest number of demonstrators.
Congressman Adam Clayton Powell,
Stokely's first picket line.
A. Philip Randolph, and Roy Wilkins joined the picket line.
Glen Echo gave me my baptism.
It dramatically changed my life.
Be sure to be at Glen Echo during the last week of the season.
Glen Echo Amusement Park.
One more time, gang.
Glen Echo Amusement Park.
And so, Illana, tell us why you made that film and how you got interested in it.
Yeah, I grew up actually about 20 minutes away from the national park that's built on the site of the amusement park. And the national park still retains the character and energy of the amusement park. You know, it actually has some of the infrastructure still. The carousel is still in operation. When I was a kid, you could see roller coaster tracks on the ground, and the swimming pool was there. I mean, it was empty, but it was there. And there was a shooting gallery, like covered in pigeon excrement. And it was just so like romantic and so magical, because also the signs were still there. Bumper car pavilion, cuddle up, popcorn, you know, in that like 1920s Art Deco font. And there were pictures around that the National Park Service had put up. And it was just, you know, it was just so evocative and such a like a testimony to a kind of Americana that I had in my mind as the good old days. And we went a lot because it was an arts center, and the DC Folk Festival was there. I went to summer camp there. And it wasn't until about 20 years later, after I'd moved away, that I brought my then fiance to come to the park to see it as a possible wedding venue. And when we were there, we met a park ranger who told us the story of how the park was integrated. And I really had to get past the first part of that story of like that the park had to be integrated, because in all of those years, and this is like, it wasn't just like my beloved amusement park. It's a DC institution. It had never occurred to me that the park had been segregated. It was not part of the interpretive displays that the National Park Service put up. And I had never noticed that I was only looking at black and white pictures of white people.
Right.
And, you know, and I lived in I had an integrated life. You know, my school was integrated, my activities were integrated. So I was, you know, I felt complicit almost in not making that connection. And when I learned about who it was that integrated the park, this really unprecedented collaboration between a white, largely Jewish neighborhood called Bannockburn and Howard University students and their organization. The Bannockburn group was largely labor organizers and civil servants, Jewish. And my father had been a Jewish labor organizer, and he had passed away a couple of years before that. And so I just had this sense that I was able to continue the conversation with him, because the things that they said and the way that they just like felt to me was very familiar. So that is why I got into this film.
Wow. And the archival, I mean, we'll talk more about the politics of it, but the archival footage is incredible. Can you tell us a story about how that happened? I read about it, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like, every single piece of footage that's in the film is a miracle. I mean, it's like some miracle of like luck and a lot of chains of persistence. But I think you're probably talking about my favorite story, and my favorite piece in the film is it's a encounter between Lawrence Henry, who was the Howard University divinity student who led the protesters, and the security guard named Francis Collins. And when I started working on the film, I didn't have any photographs. I had a few stills, but I didn't have any moving footage of the protest at all, which was difficult. You know, somehow I was going to have to deal with that. Yeah. But I had this audio recording of this encounter. And the audio recording was recorded for radio, because when the Howard University students came to Glen Echo Amusement Park in order to actually conduct a sit-in on the carousel, they were smart and they told the press. And so a radio reporter named Sam Smith arrived, and he was there for this conversation where they try to go in, and the security guard says, "You're trespassing. Can I ask your race?" And he says, "My race, I'm a member of the human race." And then this encounter like unfolds, and you kind of, certainly to my ears, it's so shocking, the overt racism. Like nobody's hiding behind anything there. And he blatantly says this park is for white people. And even in 1960, that conversation was like, I guess, so unusual that Sam Smith saved it, because in those days you used to just tape over everything. Right. And he saved it, and decades later he donated it to the national park, and they shared it.
People know this is, of course, the opening of your teaser that we just watched. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. So that's what I had. So in the meantime, as I started working on the film, I'm like a really compulsive researcher, and I tracked down every single person that I could find who had been there, even if they were a toddler. And there's about like 150 people that I spoke to. And one of the people that I talked to's mother had been one of the leaders of the protest. The mother had been gone for a while. And this woman's name is Polly Talon. And she told me what she remembered. And then luckily she held on to my phone number, because years later, like 3 years later, she called me because she had found a little yellow Kodachrome box in one of her parents' storage boxes. And she said it said Glen Echo 1960, and she asked if I wanted it. So I was like, of course. Gave her a FedEx number, and she sent me what was a Super 8 film. And basically, you can't do much with Super 8 film except send it to an expensive color lab in order for them to transfer it. And I couldn't do that because I didn't have any budget at that point, and I didn't know what was on it. I mean, it could have been her birthday party.
Right.
So I bought a $35 projector from eBay. I watched those YouTube videos where they explain to you how to use it. And I literally took a poster off a wall in my office in order to turn out the lights in order to project it. And I started projecting it, and like second frame, I understood that I was looking at footage of my protest. So I literally fell on the floor. And then I was like, oh my God, I could burn this because it's so flammable, you know? So I like jumped up, turned it off, unthreaded it, and like sent it to Color Lab with a credit card. And, when I got it back, I had about 3 minutes of footage of the protest, which was incredible. I mean, it was the gold mine. It was the treasure of footage searching. But then it wasn't until about 5 years after that, literally, that we were in the edit room, and my editor and I figured out that scene that we had footage of was taking place at the same time as the radio recording, that conversation, and that Polly Talon's dad, with his borrowed Super 8 camera, was filming the conversation. And so the footage that I had, which of all Super 8 is silent, was silent. So the footage that I had synced to the audio conversation. So these two completely separate assets existed, apart from each other for 60-something years, and were like really only joined into what is now a primary text because of just serendipity. So, I mean, that's probably the most remarkable, but every single piece of footage was like tracking down rumor after rumor after rumor, or convincing the Library of Congress that there was a can in their storage unit and would they please catalog it, because I was pretty sure it might have something that I need. You know, it was all that. It was all that.
Wow, that's so crazy. So exciting. So what do you think the messages and the takeaways from this film are today for this, like, for our political moment right now?
You know, I started making the film, it was 2014, and Obama was president. And so I was making a film, I thought, about this very early interracial collaboration, and it was like a straight line up to this post-racial White House. And of course, like, things change many times. Actually, even like since the film has come out. And now I think the message is really different. I think the message is like actually a kind of how-to. It's a kind of playbook for resistance that works. And it seems like so kind of quaint, but we have lost sight of it. And, you know, this protest worked. There's a lot of like particular tactical reasons we can talk about, but on the macro level, it's because you had these two groups of people who had completely different skills and who were able to work together despite never having any meaningful interactions with each other before, because that's how much race segregated society in 1960. And so even just the optics of it was so unusual that that got attention. You know, there's press. The headline in the Washington Post says whites join Negroes to protest Glen Echo. I mean, that's news, you know, that's a headline. And so they exploited that the optics of it. And lots of, you know, they're really savvy, and lots of other things, just like inviting, like I mentioned, the radio reporter to come.
Right.
So, you know, it's the fact that they work together and how they work together, because they were really unlikely allies, because nobody had ever, it had never happened before that you had these two groups working together. Except so that's the beginning.
A little bit, right?
A little bit, but you never had. Yeah, I mean, look, there absolutely were protests where people of different races worked together, but what you hadn't had yet, as far as anybody has found, and I believe that there are lots of stories that have still to be restored, but what you hadn't have is a white community en masse joining a Black protest. You know, you always had people who were sympathetic and who joined, you know, disparate individuals, but you never had like this kind of group joining.
Right. And that's in part because they had this cool, like this neighborhood, which was largely Jewish, right? And leftist. So it was more of a mass movement, like built into it, right? Because it was basically a progressive neighborhood.
But it matters. I think it's important is that the reason that the neighborhood existed in the first place is because there had been in the 40s lots of Jewish labor organizer, civil servant types who came to DC in order to work in the New Deal administration.
Right.
And there were so many restrictive housing covenants that they weren't able to get housing in the district. So they found each other and bought together a golf course. Right over the district line so that they would have a place to live.
Right.
So you already, like, it was fertile ground because the people who settled it were all, whether they were Jewish or not, there was plenty of Quakers, were buying into this utopian ideal.
Yeah. And I thought something that was really interesting is because I'm making this documentary that people who watch the show know about. It's about Holocaust survivors speaking out against the genocide in Gaza. And I thought it was interesting how for a lot of these Jews, you know, and never again is a very contested idea, right? These days, like there really is a battle over the soul of never again. And whether it means, you know, as shorthand, I'd say like whether that means you have to speak out against Israel or you have to support Israel. Obviously, you can tell from the show where I fall on that. But I thought it was interesting to see that once again, people were saying like because of the Holocaust, that's why we have to be protesting against segregation. And there was an interesting split because the owners of that park, right, who were refusing to integrate So you had largely Jewish community protesting for integration, and then you had the owners of the park who were Jewish, who were at first refusing to integrate. So it's an interesting kind of, I mean, because no community is a monolith, obviously, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I think that nuance is really important. And that's another thing that I think is lost so much about discourse today, is like we sort of like assume that because you have a particular heading or the banner that you stand under, that you're all the same, and there's like no crack in the armor. And that was really important to me actually about the story, is that both the owners of the park were Jewish and the people who were supporting integration, but the same thing also in the Black community. Like you had Howard University students who, as far as the local Black community was concerned, they were like outsiders who were upper middle class, who were like descending on their neighborhood, and like what were they doing there? And why were they even bothering with an amusement park when there were so many bigger fish to fry, in terms of, housing and employment. So, I mean, I think that's something that we always have to remember, is that we're not all the same, no matter, what the point of view is or political issue.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Illana, and everyone should go out and see it. And I'll try to see it on the big screen, but it was great.
I hope you come. Let me know.
Yeah. And there it
Thanks
is.
so much. I'll be there also. I'll be there doing Q&A after a bunch of the shows at IFC.
Yeah, and there's great art too.
There's great art.
Yeah.
Can I say the website?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, it's ain'tnoback.com without an apostrophe, just ain'tnoback.com.
And actually, I'm going to, as we transition from this segment to the next segment we're doing with the wonderful Due Dissidence guys, can I call you guys? Boys, lads. Brad, can you play this scene that features one of the characters? Helene is her name? Helene Wilson?
Helene Wilson.
And I think that this is something that stood out for me. Probably a lot of people don't even know what Hadassa is, but there's an interesting part where here we're going to meet her. And Hadassa is what, a Zionist women's organization? And as you can see, she that didn't speak to her. And to me, that spoke to me, because obviously today, a lot of people think that having a Jewish identity means you stand with Israel. For a lot of Jews, it's quite the opposite. And I think her kind of journey into becoming a civil rights organizer and not a member of Hadassa speaks to that divide. So we're going to play that. And then after that, we'll have Keaton and Russell from Due Dissidence. So Brad, can you full screen this? Great. And thanks so much, Illana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I joined NAG in 1960. My husband became an organizer for a white-collar union, and we moved to Washington.
It was important that NAG had white members, because had NAG been completely all Black, we wouldn't have gotten the publicity.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And I went to a school that was all white. In our 6th grade, a Black girl came into the school. Shortly after that, a second Black girl came. And I could see that nobody was talking to them. And I remember going out of my way to make friends with her. I knew how I would have felt if I was in a school where everybody was different from where I was. Maybe because I heard stories about what happened in Europe. How Jewish children were shunned, weren't allowed to go to regular schools. The Second World War radicalized me. And what happened to people who did not have power. think I gotta stretch. Okay. A number of my friends joined a lot of Jewish organizations like Hadassa, and I was not interested in that. But I was so interested in the civil rights movement, what was happening there.
I very strongly feel the Southern movement should not feel that they were the only people who are responsible for the fight for civil rights. So this is very directly my fight. As a white person, it's as much my fight as it is theirs.
That was awesome. I can't wait to see that. And I just wanted to, hey, everybody. While we're waiting, I just wanted to read a few of these super chats. Oh,
I'm back.
all right.
But
I had my window and now it's gone.
yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
but thank you for covering. So yeah. All right. Thank you guys for your patience. I'm on dog duty, and unlike other times, I'm not in my apartment, so Bucky's not as comfortable. So anyway, all right. But speaking of comfortable, I'm very comfortable bringing on our two next guests, Russell Dobular and Keaton Weiss of Due Dissidence. Welcome on the show, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Of course, yeah.
Hey there. Thanks for having us. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Wow, your mics are great. Really good mics. Shout out to you guys. It's almost like you do this for a living. And yeah, you guys are really prolific. How frequently do you stream? I feel like whenever I turn on
yeah. People used to say that about us.
Yeah, we're the hardest working men in podcasting.
People used to say that these guys are always on. Yeah. Yeah, we stream 3 days a week: Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. Sunday night, Tuesday afternoon, and then Thursday midday.
Wow, okay. Well,
we're thinking about starting a Warhol sleep stream where we just kind of leave a camera on overnight.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Put that on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Well, they got
talk about
time
passive
slots.
income.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I want to have you guys on to talk about lots of things, but let's just start off with Charlie Kirk, right? Because you guys have been doing some really good coverage of that, and there are also a bunch of updates. But I think that something that we can all agree on is that the right is being totally responsible and not exploiting this at all to crack down on free speech, because they are free speech warriors and they oppose cancel culture, right?
That's right. I hate that.
They really hate that. So let's take a look of speaking of champions of free speech. Let's take a look at the wonderful Attorney General Pam Bondi on the Katie Miller podcast on Monday. And Katie Miller, that's Stephen Miller's wife.
Yeah.
And so shout out to both of these conservative women. And of course, Katie Miller says that she needed to create a conservative podcast because there's no space for conservative women online, which was news to me. But let's take a listen to this exchange.
Speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
Oh, yeah, it's across the aisle. Yeah.
We're going to find you.
Yeah.
We'll find you.
We'll get you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And of course, just to kind of put a bow on it, let's just take a look at this tweet, this very relevant tweet. I believe Mehdi Hassan quote tweeted it and wrote lol. So let's take a look at this tweet. All right, this is from Charlie Kirk. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. Now, because Charlie Kirk was not really actually like a towering intellect, he was very inconsistent. I'm trying not to speak too ill of the dead, but you could accuse him of hypocrisy. He didn't have a real principle commitment to free speech. and you can see him going in both directions. But what are your thoughts on how the MAGA is reacting to the killing of Charlie Kirk?
Well, first, I mean, I
and then
think
we'll get into who the hell did it.
yeah. First, I mean, I think Kirk was more principled than most on the MAGA side. Like, he opposed the anti-boycott bill when it came around. You know, he was kind of one of the leading voices there when that came around the first time, when Mike Lawler was floating it, and then you had Marjorie Taylor Greene come out against it, and then Massey come out against it. So to be fair, I think he was more principled than most were. I'm not aware of his entire record on it, but I would say that. In terms of this hate speech thing, it's amazing because, first of all, the two things, I don't know if you have the video of her saying we're going to prosecute Office Depot employees for not printing out posters for Charlie Kirk vigils. She said that too. Like, the two rallying cries on the right in terms of the culture war for like the last 5 years, the two biggest ones were we're going to defend the right of Christian bakers not to bake cakes for gay weddings. And there's no such thing as hate speech. Hate speech is a made-up term. It's not a real thing. And Pam Bondi refutes both of those points in the same day. It's just amazing. But she clearly just has like no idea what her actual job is. Like, she just assumes she's supposed to be as hostile as possible. So when someone asks, so are you going to go after them? Absolutely. We'll find you and we'll come. Like, she just assumes that's her job, is to just be as threatening as possible to as many people as she possibly can, no matter what the prompt is. I don't think she really thinks these things through before she says them, which is why in this case, I mean, I think in general, obviously, we've seen a cancel culture push from the right in the wake of this shooting. But even a lot of the MAGA people have come out and said, this is ridiculous. She has to be fired because she's undermining our own hypocrisy in a way, because she's being so on the nose and just so directly refuting our key talking points from over the past 5 or 6 years that it's just untenable. So like, even Matt Walsh is saying she's got to be fired for this because this is crazy.
Ixnay on the hypocrisy nay. With Pam Bondi and Pam Bondi and a lot of the people in this administration, this is always part of the Achilles heel of fascism. If you look at the kinds of people who are willing to be part of a fascist government, they're crackpots. They're people with no reputation to protect. Very often, this is something we've been talking about a lot. I don't know if you've ever had Peter Turchin on. I've been reading his book. His theory of elite overproduction combined with mass immiseration, and they tend to go together, tends to lead to this kind of social instability and fascist takeovers. And it makes sense because part of his thinking is, the elites turn on a wealth pump and suck the wealth up to themselves, which leads to elite overproduction. So then you wind up with a lot of frustrated children of the elites who can't find a position. Then you get a fascist government like this, and you got a lot of people like Pam Bondi who have no real talent, quite the opposite. And their one talent, their appeal for an administration like that, is that they'll do anything. They'll do anything because they don't have options. They don't have a reputation to protect. Nobody with a future is going to be part of an administration that is very likely to end up making them a despised historical figure and possibly somebody who's eventually going to be open to prosecution.
Yeah, inshallah. Yeah, let's hope. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. No, I'll have to look into that. What is it called? Elite overproduction?
Yeah. His last book was called End Times.
Okay.
And he really lays out his theory there, and it lines up very well with what we're seeing today. Like, you see a lot of, usually in a sneering way, you'll see it coming from places like the Wall Street Journal, where they talk about Mamdani as a kind of revolution of the elites. They're not entirely wrong. Like, if you look at the class of people who surround Mamdani, 10 years ago, they were the people we were fighting about over Hillary Clinton and Bernie. Like most of them would have aligned with Hillary Clinton. The system's not working for them anymore. That's what's radicalized them.
Right.
And that's essentially Turchin's theory, that when you have this combination of a frustrated elite class whose aspirations are not being met and popular immiseration, it's very combustible, and it leads to social instability and very often revolution. Now in this country,
and an uptick in podcasting.
And an uptick in podcasting. Well, that was 1916. St. Petersburg had like 5,333 podcasts. No, Keaton keeps pointing out, one of the things, and one of your previous guests was talking about this. A lot of people who spend time in this space, speaking of podcasting, are under the impression that there's more of a revolutionary left movement around them than there is. Like this country collapses into civil war. The smart money's on the fascists. Those Duck Dynasty motherfuckers are gonna kill you, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like what Noura was saying. Yeah, exactly. Like there's morality, but just morality aside, if we can just pause morality, like that's why I was very when the killing happened and I thought it was someone on the left, which it's not. We can get into that. I was really angry. I was like, how could you possibly, if you're a leftist, you can't possibly think that this is a good idea. Like there will be so much blowback. And the other side is we are so outarmed. So by like the people on the ranges, as Noura referred to, and the state, we have no chance. So, but I just do want to defend my little dig. And I'm a little bit, I think that it's very, I want to talk about more interesting things than like where we fall down on Kirk. Cause I think it's kind of boring, but I do have to point out just some of the things. Cause he was a little bit, and look, what is Hexa called Trump, like strategically unpredictable? You got, Trump isn't the only person who gets to do that. So let's see. We got this protesters that continually interrupt Senate confirmation hearings should be arrested and never be allowed back. # lock them up. Not very good, Charlie. Not very good. Anti-cancel culture. What else do we got? Oh, this is kind of ominous. Sure, arrest the protesters on campus, but they are still in your country. They are here multiplying by the day and increasing in resolve. Many Americans are finally waking up to the reality that many of their fellow citizens hate the West and they aren't going anywhere. They are filled with venom and bitterness, demanding the end of civilization. Okay, so that's another one. And that doesn't sound very tolerant of discourse, even though Ezra Klein says that he did politics the right way, right? That was interesting. And you guys see who Ezra Klein had on his show recently?
Am I the only one in this space who doesn't give a fuck about Ezra Klein? Everybody keeps bringing up Ezra Klein. I never read. I didn't read his article.
Oh yeah,
which you kind of can't make up. Like after praising Charlie Kirk. Okay, Charlie Kirk writes: a mass pro-Gaza protester at UCLA explains how leftists are dead set on tearing down America's institutions. Given that the University of California is founded upon colonialism, it's inherently a violent institution. There needs to be an adjustment of U.S. imperialism. And then Kirk writes, the left is a fundamentally anti-civilization movement and must be stopped. Yeah, and then your kind of typical stuff about BLM, how BLM should be stopped. And then, again, I'm just going to end on this one because he's such an ideas guy. This is about a professor, and this one got called out because it was pretty hypocritical. He should be fired. That a professor who has openly called for the murder of police is drawing a large paycheck from the state of California is a disgrace to the people of that state, and it's an insult to the men and women who put on a uniform. All right. Anyway, so, but more interesting, perhaps, even than that, is who killed Charlie Kirk, and what is the deal with his connection to Israel? Where do you want to start with that?
Well, we were going to break that on our own show because we hired a private investigator.
Okay, good.
And we've it's a good question. At one time, Keaton's more the resident conspiracy theorist around Due Dissidence. As time has gone on, I've seen too much, man. Like, I don't think Butler was what it was presented as. I think it's very obvious they're not even doing a good job with this one of presenting it as what they're claiming that it is. We got to interview the author of Chaos a while back. And it's about the Manson murders, but he got into it really on the level of the possibility that the Manson family was a CIA experiment. One of the most chilling things in the book is one of the informants is asked, so was the Manson family a CIA experiment gone wrong? And he said, no, it was actually a CIA experiment gone right. And he makes a pretty good case for the idea that they were experimenting with different drug cocktails on the hippie culture to see if they could create killers, like it was part of their MKUltra kind of just mind control experiments. And something that you hear in the official story is, yeah, that happened, but it was crazy. We didn't actually succeed in that. It was cuckoo pants. He actually found the records. I think his name was Gottlieb, the person who was really in charge of the mind control program. He dug this stuff up. It was like in forgotten files. And I think Berkeley. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read it. But he dug up the files, and he actually had notes that he had succeeded, that the experiments had been successful, that they had been able to successfully implant and erase memories. There were a lot of strange things that happened on army bases where he was stationed as a resident psychiatrist. So if you take that reporting, which is pretty solid, and when we interviewed him, it was clear he was serious. He took his responsibilities seriously. He would not offer conclusions that he couldn't back up with the receipts. So he wasn't just an irresponsible person spewing these things. He went into deep debt writing that book. It started out being an article he was contracted to write, and it wound up being a 10-year thing that he went into. So if you take his reporting,
do you think Charlie Manson killed Charlie Kirk?
No. It's actually Charles Manson had 53 kids with those women. It was probably one of Manson's kids. No, I think those MKUltra experiments were successful, partly based on that reporting. And I think when you look at some of this stuff, where it may have been the person might have been there, and they might have had a gun, and they might have fired some bullets, but it doesn't make any sense that they did that. You see that with Butler. The shooter at Butler was in a BlackRock commercial. Like, what are the odds of that? And then you look at this, you have George Zinn there, who was also a 9/11 witness, and we haven't had time to dig into it, but apparently he was arrested today for having PDF files on his computer, so to speak. So all of this is just too
He was
weird.
the one who was yelling SHO.
Shoot me.
Yeah.
And then Keaton, you just texted this over to me now, that the text messages have come out. You texted me about the Klippenstein stuff. Like, it doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So the text message is the latest thing that's breaking, where apparently the FBI released transcripts of text messages between the alleged shooter and his trans lover, if you will. And no one's buying them. I mean, we can read them if we want. It's kind of long to read now, but no one in I saw a tweet. Steve Bannon said he's not buying it. Matt Walsh said he's not buying it. Just really, I can read a little bit of it here. Like, it just gets to the point where here. So here's one of the texts from the alleged shooter is talking about how he's going to try to, get away. I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it, meaning the gun, as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about Prince. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Like he's I mean, this seems like designed to be presented as evidence. Like people are saying, like, why the hell? First of all, who calls a car a vehicle in a text message? Like, it just looks very, very strange, to the point where, hey, it's not me saying I don't buy it. Steve Bannon says he doesn't buy it, right? Matt Walsh says he doesn't. So look, I mean, it just gets weirder and weirder. And circumstantially, you know, Max Blumenthal wrote 2 really terrific articles over this past week about Charlie's falling out with, you know, a lot of very influential pro-Israel people, including potentially Netanyahu himself, who apparently invited him to Jerusalem, and Kirk turned him down. That was just a couple of weeks ago. They were afraid, evidently. I mean, this seems to be true, whether they were behind his murder or not. They seemed to be very nervous that this young guy, who was extraordinarily influential within the conservative movement, was starting to ask questions about Israel. And it makes sense that he would, because a lot of young people, whether they're on the left or the right, are adopting anti-Israel views, since they're online a lot. They see this footage out of Gaza, you know, and, you know, most people with a beating heart can see that and recoil in horror at it. And so Kirk was getting a lot of feedback from young conservatives about this issue. And so in response to that, he started, even though he was generally still very pro-Israel, and he understood that the president, who he supported very much, is very pro-Israel. And, you know, he was in constant dialogue with them. So he was, you know, playing the game at a very high level, which I'm sure he thought was, you know, necessary to do. But he started platforming some more Israel critical voices at his big conferences, which are huge in the conservative space. He hosted Tucker Carlson, who went on a big rant against Israel and against Bill Ackman, very influential pro-Israel money man. He hosted a debate. He moderated a debate between some Zionist whose name I forget and Dave Smith, who's been very critical of Israel. And this was really pissing off a lot of donors to Turning Points, potential donors to Turning Points, or people who just, you know, were so in that network connected to the upper echelons of the conservative movement, where Kirk had a ton of influence. This is the other thing that people have to understand about Charlie Kirk, because, you know, when you're on Twitter a lot of these MAGA influencer personalities kind of blend into each other. All right, you got MAGA Voice, you got N Wokeness, you got Gunther Eagleman, you got Benny Johnson, you got Jack Posobiec, right? Kirk swam in those circles, but he was much bigger than all of them. Charlie Kirk had a legitimate ground game built out and a very formidable political machine built out. He had chapters of his Turning Point USA at 3,500 campuses around the country. So he's a 31-year-old guy. He wants to run for president someday. He already has a ground game built out. All of those Turning Point chapters become campaign machines. So this was a guy who you really can't overstate the likelihood that he was the future of the conservative movement. And young people had his ear, and he was starting to platform anti-Israel voices. He was starting to ask questions himself. The last interview he ever did was with Ben Shapiro, where he asked Ben Shapiro, you know, the media lied to us about COVID and this and that. Do you think they're lying to us about Israel too? And yeah, given the very strange circumstances surrounding his death, and now just the kind of crazy quote unquote evidence that we're supposed to take seriously, yeah, it raises a lot more questions than it answers. But I'll end on this, because this is a point that we touched on our show today, and this is something that Max touched on as well. Whether or not Israel is behind this horrible crime, this murder, it's still worth looking into Kirk's falling out with these Zionists, because one thing that will be revealed, I believe, the deeper we look into this, is whether they were behind his killing or not. What it does reveal is something very damaging to the Zionist cause, which is that most support for Israel in this country is really just manufactured. It's not organic, right? The fact that this super influential guy within the conservative movement had to be sat down and talked to and lectured by Bill Ackman and screamed at by a British woman who has now been revealed as Douglas Murray's friend. Remember the maniac who went on Piers Morgan who Piers Morgan screamed at. That's who apparently
Natasha,
Natasha, whatever the fuck her name is.
That tracks.
Yeah, she was apparently the woman in the Hamptons who got in his face and started screaming at him. And the next day he went on with Mygan Kelly and talked about how badly he was being treated. So like whether they were behind his killing or not, what is being exposed is the level of influence that they exert over the process in order to manufacture support for the state of Israel. It's much more manufactured than real. And I think that will come out as a result of this investigation, if you want to call it that. And it is one. I mean, Max did a phenomenal job. Those 2 articles were really, really good. I strongly recommend everybody read them at the Gray Zone. You'll see both of them there. One is about Ackman specifically, and then the other one is a little more general.
Can you give us a summary of them? Because for people who haven't read them.
Well, I basically did. I mean, that's basically, that's basically what I sourced that from.
That's the upshot of it.
Yeah, that's the upshot of both of those articles, is that he had some very hostile interactions with some very influential Zionists in the last months of his life. I mean, the one with Ackman was early August. Jesus Christ. And then Netanyahu apparently invited him to Jerusalem 2 weeks ago. So like this all happened in the run-up to his assassination. It looks really bad. It really does. And whether or not they're guilty, what this will expose is that the young right-wingers are not as pro-Israel as they may seem, absent all of this outside influence and pressure and money and perhaps even threats, honestly.
Yeah, I think what's really being exposed here is how much the Zionists have infiltrated all of these institutions that were sold as right-wing culture war institutions like PragerU, like Babylon Bee. All of these things are getting exposed as really being run by IDF veterans who are backed with Israeli money. I mean, Turning Points USA was backed with Zionist money, and that's part of why theoretically he was getting this kind of pushback. And I think based on Max's reporting, based on what Candace said on her show last night, based on her conversations with Charlie Kirk, he was getting all this pressure. That's like you took the mafia's money and then you didn't do the job that they gave you the money for. You start speaking out of turn. And you know how these people are. You know, they made a whole movie kind of like examining the spiritual angst around assassination, Munich. Right, where they were kind of examining that. So you're openly admitting that assassination is kind of built into the Zionist project. So whether they didn't, whether they MKUltra'd this kid to be a patsy, which frankly I kind of suspect something like that. It's really blowing up this whole illusion that these right-wing institutions are not bought and paid for. When I went to the Dissident Dialogues, that was where I met Brianna, where she was just treated very badly by the crowd and on that stage. That was where I really saw that. That was where I really saw these people are being paid by somebody. They're being paid by somebody because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. You're going to have this whole conference that's all about how you're a dissident. It's called Dissident Dialogues, and you're against speech codes and you're for freedom of speech. But you just happen to have a foreign policy that could as easily come off the desk of Jim Baker as Antony Blinken. Like, this is the one area where there's no diversity of opinion. You just all land in the same place on that without any money behind it, without you being an operative. They're all operatives in that anti-woke, defend Western civilization space. They're all controlled.
Yeah, I mean, I think that here's what I would say. I have no idea if Israel had a role or not. I do think that what I've seen about the shooting seems really suspicious, and I'm not like a gun person, but I watched, Michael Savage. You guys played that. We may want to play it just because it's really entertaining.
Oh, we got to play it.
Yeah, but we'll play it. Yeah. So there's definitely something weird and suspicious about the circumstances surrounding the shooting. And we can play that, and then you guys can break it down. I will say though that I agree that there's no question that this Israel thing needs to be looked into, even if it's just to say, like, why are they so invested in responding to this? Like, why is there such a PR push, right? At the least conspiratorial, like that is important information and important analysis for us to do. Let's actually take a look at Netanyahu talking about the great Charlie Kirk.
And I'm sorry, Katie, which
clip would
that be?
So these aren't the ones. We're definitely going to get to the ones that they sent us, but this was in earlier on. It may not be added. I sent you the Michael Savage, right? Let me send you the Charlie Kirk, the Netanyahu one. 1 second.
Okay.
And then we definitely should look at the at some of the clip and scene, because like as we've seen, there's a real investment in portraying this guy as a leftist.
Yeah,
not necessarily supported by the evidence. And I mean, I also thought that the trans thing was so weird. Like they seemed really wanting for there to be a trans angle.
Yeah, before they ever found anybody.
Yeah, and there wasn't any evidence of it, right? Well, it literally was like the markings on the bullet were TRN, and the Wall Street Journal reported on that as trans ideology.
And then they had to retract it, I believe.
Yeah, that dog doesn't seem to be hunting. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the theory with the most traction online is clearly the Israel theory.
Yeah,
there's no question about that.
But did you notice that Dana Bash actually like pushed back? Now I'm seeing like, oh well, she's obviously this sounds like total conspiracy, but theory. But obviously she's a big Zionist, and it is interesting that she asked about the trans roommate, whether that would be part of the motive. She asked twice, Cox, to the governor of Utah. And here you have this conservative who's like being much more sensitive about trans stuff than Dana Bash is. I mean, Dana Bash sounds like he's on Fox News. She's like, is that why? Did that have anything to do with the motivation? She asked him twice. And this guy's trying to like diffuse the situation a little bit, even though he keeps saying that he had leftist ideology. And I don't think that that's true.
If you look at it, as I'm sure Russell and Keaton already know, the released text messages that this person texted the roommate that might also be some sort of a partner as well.
Yeah.
I read a little bit of it. Yeah, here's the thing, like nobody's buying any of what they're saying.
Well,
they're not credible in anything.
Well, to me, reading through those, it really made it seem on the face of it that roommate person had no awareness that was what if this person did that they had an awareness of it ahead of time, and then coupled with the fact that they immediately started cooperating with law enforcement. But also, and I apologize, I don't have these at the ready, just speaking to me personally, regardless of what the actual explanation is, just based on what the FBI or the official story seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's video of this person walking to this event and has a very noticeable, basically like his right leg, he can't bend it. And the explanation is that the bolt action rifle is down the leg of his pants.
Mm-hmm.
But then immediately after the shooting, well, I'm sorry, and then there's security footage of him going up the stairs, and you can see both of his legs bending.
Right.
And then oh, and I'm pretty sure in between that he changes his shirts, like he's wearing a maroon shirt, then he changes to a black shirt, and then he gets up on this roof, does this shooting, and then instantaneously has the time to disassemble this firearm that requires.
You're stepping on Michael Savage's toes, because that's what he's going to talk about. But keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You always do that to Michael Savage. Why you always do Michael Savage?
Yeah. Well, just that when I going by what they're saying, it just seems to fall apart when you think through the logistics of this and how it's like, wait, how would this be it? Because over here, this is it. It just seems like whatever the actual explanation is, the current official explanation, it just doesn't, to me, on a gut level.
Doesn't
I'm like
seem
that.
kosher.
Yeah.
Not kosher.
Not
It's not
kosher,
kosher.
But anyway, I do have now. I have those the Netanyahu and the Michael
great.
Savage, Katie.
Okay, yeah.
Which one would?
Should we start with? Should we go with should we go with Michael Savage? Yeah,
Sure.
let's go with Michael Savage. That follows up. That dovetails nicely on Brad's nation. Yeah. Okay, so this is right-wing MAGA man Michael Savage, who is no leftist and no critic of Donald Trump at all. Okay.
Greatest content creator of all time.
That is one
Best
funny
whoever did it.
motherfucker, man.
Best whoever did it.
Something's wrong. I know I shouldn't do this. I'm risking an awful lot to go up against this FBI, the MAGA FBI. Something's very wrong with what I just heard. I mean, I watched it. I was hoping that they had caught the bastard who shot Charlie. So we saw a video of a person jumping off the roof. It looked very legitimate to me. However, there was no rifle in his hand. Now, the Mauser does not break down very easily, incidentally, for those of you who know weapons. Something's wrong with the whole thing. They're trying to claim he removed the barrel from the Mauser and fit the receiver and stock in his backpack and barrel in his pants leg, all in 2 seconds. It is not easy to remove a Mauser barrel or index it after reinstalling and remain accurate. We are not hearing or seeing reality. And by the way, the photo of the rifle allegedly left in the woods has the barrel installed. So we're supposed to believe a guy is on the run after killing Charlie Kirk, and he pauses in the woods to reinstall a barrel, and then he leaves it for us to find, the FBI to find. I don't believe a word of it. I shouldn't do this. I know I'm putting myself at risk, but I can't take it anymore. I can't take the bullshit from this fucking government. It's lying to us.
Fucking government.
Something's wrong. Something's so wrong. It's sickening. Look at this idiot. They found the rifle and they're getting the prints. Are you stupid? Are you that stupid? Are you that dumb? The man jumps off the roof. There's no rifle there. Oh, it's in his backpack. I just told you, moron, that this rifle doesn't break down that easily. And then it's supposed to be reassembled while he's on the run. Wait, I'll stop now and reassemble it and leave it in the woods in a box, wrapped in a towel. He left breadcrumbs. Oh, and the trans stuff on the cartridges. Bullshit. Something is wrong with this whole fucking picture. I am persona non grata in this White House. I will tell you right now, I flew with Donald Trump in Air Force One. I consider him close to me. I have not been able to get near him since this administration took hold. They have thrown me out. They've castigated, thrown me in the desert. They don't want me near them. They don't want real truth tellers near them. Sean Hannity, immediately, that pimp scumbag, goes on the air and repeats the government.
I love this, by the way. I love this right wing, like MAGA on MAGA Civil War. I'm really here for it.
Lie, that lousy son of a bitch. How the fuck does Sean Hannity live with himself? Well, we just prove, and he had the Sean. You know what? Kept animal. You're like a whore. Kept in a brothel. Sean Hannity, you've always been a whore in a brothel. You have hit a new low, Hannity, and
so good.
Something is wrong. Somebody killed this young guy, and everyone is asking who done it, and we're supposed to believe they think we're this stupid? So Kash Patel is there, he doesn't say a word, and Donald Trump's in the Yankee Stadium? What the hell is going on here? I'm just an American citizen who's been in the business of observing since I'm 18 years old, and I don't buy one word of this narrative, not one single word. So I'm going to end in a moment.
By the way, do you know what his real last name is?
Michael Weiner.
Michael Weiner, yeah.
Is it really?
Michael Weiner, and he has a master's degree from the University of Hawaii in medical botany and medical anthropology.
Yeah, he's a botanist. He's written books on like natural medicine.
Yeah, from the University of California, Berkeley in nutritional ethnomedicine.
Yeah.
Right, that homeopathy and
All right.
herbal medicine. Anyway,
he's a very interesting guy. You know,
just
he's
hear me out.
Yeah.
Michael Savage, Lear.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
King Lear with Michael Savage.
oh yeah, I like it.
You
Yeah,
want to
What
get
always
asses
attracted me to
back
Michael
in the seats
Savage
at
is
Broadway
like
for Shakespeare.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's a Bronx Jew. My father's a Bronx Jew, but
same.
my father's like a very left-wing Bronx Jew. My father's like a communist Bronx Jew.
Right.
And this guy's like an arch conservative Bronx Jew, but he has like the same mannerisms, the same way of speaking, and a very similar sense of humor as my dad. So I always thought of Savage as like the bizarro universe version of my
Right,
father.
could have been your father.
And like exactly.
Yeah,
So that
he
always
was
Is this true? His son is CEO of Rockstar Energy.
Yeah, his son founded Rockstar Energy. His son's like a billionaire. So, I mean, they got money, coming out the wazoo. So they're very wealthy because of that.
Well,
But yeah.
Bronx, but he did go to my father. He went to Jamaica High in Queens.
Oh, okay. There you go. There you go. Yeah,
My mother went to Jamaica High in Queens.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
I think she did. Yeah, that's weird.
Apparently, he also worked for Timothy Leary.
Michael Savage did.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, fascinating man. But yeah. So
have you ever seen his rant on communist basil?
No.
On the communists stealing the basil. Yeah, we did a video on that.
That is you haven't lived. We'll send that to you.
All right, great. Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, so there's that, which is insane, but that's kind of what you were referring to, Brad, right? Some of the impossibilities.
He touched on some of that, and just a variety of things that both literally physically don't seem possible or make sense, and then others that just would be possible but don't make sense. Right. In terms of like, why would someone change their clothes like 4 different times, like from 2 outfits going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth? You could physically do that. It doesn't make sense. But then the stuff about like taking apart a firearm that would take like 10 minutes or more to take apart, and this person's doing it multiple times in like a handful of seconds. That The other thing, I don't know, Keaton or Russell, if you'd heard any updates on this, but just speaking about things that seemed kind of eyebrow raising, there was also discussion about shortly after this shooting, there's a local airport that was a short distance, like 10-15 minutes away from where the shooting took place. And shortly after the shooting, a private plane took off from that airport.
Yes.
We've heard that.
Which I don't understand how that was allowed to happen.
Right.
If they
close
didn't
the
shut that down.
airspace. Yeah.
But what made it especially eyebrow raising was that after taking off, this plane, I think it's illegal, basically turned off its like navigation, the way that it communicates with the tower for like
an hour.
Yeah. And then it like turned it back on. I don't know if that had been, somehow that was shown to be not unrelated or something, or if that's still up in the air. I just thought it was very curious thing to
I also heard they threw him into an SUV instead of an ambulance. I'm not sure, but I've seen that before. You see a lot of these things, and it's hard to tell which are verifiable and which aren't, especially when everything coming out of the quote unquote trusted sources doesn't seem all that trustworthy.
Right.
Yeah, that's what's like really bizarre is that we see this again, like Cox, who does seem like a mild-mannered, nice Republican. I guess the bar is like so low.
Yeah.
Well, it's Utah, Utah. How bad can he be? It's Utah.
Yeah. Anyone who's not like Stephen Miller just looks like such a prince. Like Aaron and I were doing Monday morning, and we had that Langford guy on. We couldn't believe it. He looks so normal. This is a guy who's like awful and scary, and denied the election, and once like got mad at me because I said something about how he looked like a fetus at the Huffington Post, and he wanted them to take it down, but they didn't. But to their credit, major win for victory. But like Ken Klippenstein reached out. So there's this New York Times piece, right? But then there's also Ken Klippenstein's piece, which made some really important points. If you are watching this live, you are in so much luck because you just watched a great show. And also, if you're watching this later and you want to see the whole show, including the extended interview with Keaton and Russell, and we get into lots of really interesting content related to Charlie Kirk, related to who else do we get into? Basically Charlie Kirk's, lots of Israel stuff. You can do that at patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. Thank you so much, Brad. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Nate. And we will see you guys next week. And I may be doing something. Keep an eye out because I may be doing, Brad, I didn't tell you this. I'm definitely doing an in-person event, a climate panel, but we may be streaming it. Unclear though. We'll have to well, I'm not committing to that yet. Just saying, check it out. Check out the, we'll post it on YouTube and Twitter. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Okay, I'm down. You got rivers, man. You got rivers, man.